Hello everyone. My nickname is Peter from Vietnam. I'm over 40 years old. Today, I want to talk about topic. As a Vietnamese, here's why hard work doesn't always lead to wealth. If there's one thing that makes me proud of Vietnam, it's how incredibly hardworking Vietnamese people are. However, hard work doesn't always translate to wealth. Take me, for example. I've been working my tail off for nearly 15 years, yet I still can't afford to buy a house. In fact, like most Vietnamese workers, my income is just enough to scrape by. Every morning, before the sun is even fully up, many people are already starting their day. Street vendors prepare their goods in the early hours. Market traders open up their stalls. Factory workers rush to their shifts. And rideshare drivers accept their very first trips of the day. Walking down the streets of Vietnam, you'll easily run into people working nonstop. According to international surveys on working hours, Vietnam ranks among the countries with relatively high working hours in the region. There are people who sell breakfast in the early morning and keep running their businesses until late into the evening. There are outdoor laborers who have to work under the scorching summer sun. There are those who spend almost their entire day on a motorbike delivering packages, picking up passengers, or transporting goods. In big cities as well as rural areas, hard work seems to have become a part of daily life. I think many foreign tourists visiting Vietnam get the exact same impression. They're often amazed to see shops opening so early and staying active until late at night. It seems like everywhere you look, there are always people grinding to make a living. And the reality is that Vietnam's economy has changed drastically over the past few decades. The country is growing faster, cities are more modern, infrastructure is better, and the standard of living for many has significantly improved. But alongside those positive changes, there's one question that always crosses my mind. If Vietnamese people work that hard, why are so many still struggling to get by? Why is it that some people work from dawn to dusk, year after year, yet still feel like owning a home is a distant dream? Why do so many families have to pinch pennies for every single expense, even though they almost never take a day off? I don't think the reason is laziness or a lack of effort. On the contrary, what I see every day is countless people doing their absolute best to build a better life for themselves and their families. And that brings me to the bigger question of this video. In today's modern society, is working hard simply not enough to get rich? I think when people hear this story, many often jump to a very simple answer. If someone is still poor, maybe they just aren't working hard enough. It sounds logical. After all, we've always been taught that as long as we try harder, work harder, and persevere, life will eventually get better. And to some extent, that's true. Hard work can absolutely help someone improve their life. It helps them secure a more stable income, gives them more opportunities to learn, and allows them to move forward step by step. But observing real life here in Vietnam, I've come to realize that hard work is only part of the story. Think about a factory worker pulling 8 to 12-hour shifts every single day for years on end. Or a market vendor who has to wake up while it's still pitch black and only heads home when the day is completely over. They work incredibly hard, yet their income usually only inches up a tiny bit year after year. Meanwhile, the cost of living keeps skyrocketing. Rent goes up, education costs go up, healthcare costs go up, and most notably, real estate prices surge. This made me realize that the issue isn't just about how hard a person works. It's also about the fact that they are working within a system where the value of labor rises quite slowly. For the vast majority of working people, their main source of income is wages or profits from a small business. But wages usually grow in small, incremental steps. Meanwhile, certain types of assets appreciate at a drastically faster pace. The clearest example of this in Vietnam is land and real estate. Some people spend an entire year working their tails off just to save a small amount of money. Yet somewhere else, the value of a piece of land can shoot up by an amount equivalent to several years of their hard labor. That's why we sometimes witness a very bizarre paradox. A person can grind every single day, but still feel like they're barely making any headway, while someone else who already owns property can grow their wealth exponentially faster without having to put in more hours. I'm not saying that every wealthy person just got lucky, nor am I saying that every poor person is hardworking. Life is always more complicated than that. But looking at the bigger picture, I think the question is no longer whether Vietnamese people are hardworking, because almost anyone can see that. The real question is, why does the value of labor seem to be rising so much slower than the value of assets? And that is probably one of the most critical reasons why so many people feel like they are running as fast as they can. Yet the finish line just keeps moving further away. According to the General Statistics Office, the average monthly income of a Vietnamese worker in 2024 was just over 8 million VND, which is equivalent to a little over $300. With this income, many can cover their daily expenses, but saving up to buy a home is a whole different story. I still remember talking to older generations who told me that a few decades ago, land in many places was dirt cheap. There were even areas that back then, no one ever imagined would become valuable. But then cities expanded, roads were built, the population grew, industrial zones popped up, and land prices started to soar. In some places, real estate values skyrocketed at a pace that left normal income growth completely in the dust. This creates two entirely different realities within the exact same society. For those who already owned land or a home, their wealth multiplied over time. Sometimes, they didn't even have to do anything special. The value of their property just kept climbing thanks to the development around it. Meanwhile, for those who don't own any assets yet, especially young people, the story is completely different. They go to work every day. They save money every month. They try to build up their savings little by little. But in many cases, the speed at which their savings grow simply cannot keep up with the rising cost of housing. And that is exactly when a sense of helplessness kicks in. You work harder. Your income might be higher than it was last year. But the house you want to buy has also become more expensive than it was last year. A gap that seemed to be closing suddenly widens again. This isn't just a Vietnamese story. Many countries around the world are facing the exact same reality. But in Vietnam, where owning a home has long been viewed as an ultimate life goal, people feel this struggle deeply. I often hear people say that their parents were able to buy a house just on a few years of honest labor. Today, many young people are working just as hard, often with higher levels of education than previous generations. Yet they find the prospect of buying a home infinitely harder. And that's when we begin to see a sobering truth. In a modern economy, not every dollar appreciates at the same rate. Income from labor typically grows slowly. Meanwhile, the value of certain assets can grow exponentially faster. When this gap persists for years, the divide between property owners and those who live solely on a paycheck only gets wider. Perhaps that's why many Vietnamese people today don't necessarily feel poorer than before. Their lives have actually improved. But at the same time, they feel that achieving major milestones like buying a home or building wealth is becoming harder than ever. In major cities like Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City, a modest apartment can cost several billion VND. In fact, multiple market reports show that housing prices have risen significantly faster than worker incomes in recent years. This means that even if your salary goes up year after year, the dream of homeownership doesn't get any closer. Just imagine a worker who manages to save about 2 million VND a month. In a year, they save about 24 million VND. In 10 years, that's about 240 million VND. And that's assuming no unexpected life expenses pop up. Meanwhile, the price of an apartment in the big cities is up in the billions. That's why so many young people today feel like they are trapped in a rigged race. In Haiphong, where I live, I often see rideshare drivers, factory workers, and market vendors grinding from dawn to dusk. Many of them might make a few 100,000 VND a day. But to buy a home worth billions, they would have to save for decades. And that's only if housing prices miraculously stop climbing. According to Forbes, the total net worth of Vietnam's richest billionaires has increased by tens of billions of dollars in recent years. This doesn't mean they don't deserve their success, but it does show that assets can grow at a much faster rate than wages. Looking at Vietnam today, I think we can see two different stories unfolding at the exact same time. The first story is one of growth. Cities are becoming more modern. New businesses are popping up everywhere. The average per capita income is higher than before. More and more people own cars, travel, and have access to opportunities that the previous generation could hardly fathom. It is a highly remarkable transformation. But alongside that story, there is another reality. The wealth gap between different groups in society seems to be growing more stark. Today in Vietnam, it's not hard to find ultra-modern urban developments lined with villas, and luxury cars. But it's also not hard to find laborers working from dawn to dusk just to make ends meet. What's fascinating is that both of these realities exist within the very same city, sometimes just a few streets apart. I think this is one of the most profound shifts that Vietnam has experienced throughout its economic development. So ultimately, I think the answer to the question at the beginning of this video is this. Are Vietnamese people hardworking? Based on what I see every single day, the answer is a resounding yes. From street vendors and factory workers to rideshare drivers, farmers in the fields, and market traders, so many people are pouring their hearts into building a better life for themselves and their families. And it is precisely that hard work that has driven Vietnam's development today. But at the same time, I also believe that hard work is no longer the sole factor determining wealth. In a modern economy, opportunities, education, access to capital, asset ownership, and market shifts all play a crucial role. That is why we see people pushing themselves to the limit every day, yet still struggling to buy a home or build savings. While those who already own property or successful businesses have far more avenues to multiply their wealth. I don't think this is just a Vietnamese story. It's a challenge that many nations around the world are grappling with. How can economic growth be measured not just by towering skyscrapers or beautiful statistics, but actually felt in the lives of everyday workers? How do we ensure that those who work hard have the chance to get ahead, rather than just get by? And how can the younger generation keep believing that their efforts will truly pay off in the future? I don't have all the answers. I'm just a Vietnamese citizen observing the world around me. But as I pass by local markets, construction sites, factories, and bustling streets every day, there's one thing that always gives me pause. Countless people are doing their absolute best. Countless people are working their tails off. And perhaps the most critical question isn't whether they are working hard, but whether that hard work is being fairly rewarded. That is my perspective on an issue that weighs heavily on the minds of many Vietnamese people today. Thank you for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts. In today's modern society, do you think hard work is still a guaranteed path to wealth?